My Lord and my God, I firmly believe that you are here, that you see me, that you hear me. I adore you with profound reverence. I ask you for pardon of my sins and grace to make this time of prayer fruitful. My Mother Immaculate, Saint Joseph, my Father and Lord, my guardian angel, intercede for me. Today's Gospel scene, in some ways, is all about a small boy and a small little bundle he has under his arm. The boy probably begins out in that morning being sent out by his mum with this little package of bread that she has baked, barley loaves, and some fish for him to sell. And he heads off with this little bundle to earn some extra money for his family. And it's his lucky day, because as he's heading off beside the lake to find people there who want to buy some bread or fish, he sees a huge crowd collecting. And they're collecting around the apostles and Jesus. They've realized that Jesus is in the vicinity. They go running up to where Jesus is. He sees all the commotion and he says to himself, aha, there is a ready-made market for my bread and my fish. And he gathers then, he mingles with the crowd, and maybe he's about to start selling his goods. But then, this is the way I like to imagine it, a small voice says to him, whatever his name is, we say it's, I don't know, Mark, don't sell the bread. Give it to Jesus instead. Approach his apostles and offer him the bread and the fish. Maybe Jesus is hungry. Maybe the apostles have nothing to eat. Why don't you offer your bread and your fish to them? And we can imagine a voice inside him then saying, but I have to sell this. I have to earn the money. My family needs the money. Or what's this? This is so small. 5 barley loaves, which is the food of the poor, and 2 small fish. Maybe they will laugh when they see this. This is kind of ridiculous. This is such a small amount. Or even that he would say, well, there's other people who got far more interesting things to offer to the apostles and to Jesus. But then he says, well, why don't I? I will go to the apostles and offer them this bread and this fish. Because, well, God seems to be asking me for this. And maybe it's because the apostles are hungry or Jesus is hungry and they have nothing. And this would be a nice little treat for them. So he approaches the apostles. And as he approaches them, and he begins to speak with some of them, Andrew and Simon Peter's, Andrew is the one who he approaches. Maybe Andrew's more approachable. He looks less threatening to a young boy. And he approaches him and says, well, excuse me, sir, here I have a little gift for Jesus and you. And at that very time then, the apostles had been approaching Jesus, saying, there's a lot of people here. What are we to do? And Jesus had been saying, well, what would it take to feed them all? Where can we buy some bread for these people to eat? Now, the funny thing is, Jesus only said this to test Philip and the apostles. He knew, we're told, that he was going to do something special. He knew exactly what he was going to do. And I like to think it was that he knew that at this moment the boy was responding to the grace to go and give his little package of bread and fish to the apostles for him. He knew that. He knew that the boy essentially had said yes to God's plan without realizing why it was so important. And that with this bread and with those 2 fish, Jesus was going to end up feeding what is probably something like 15,000 people. Seems incredible. The boy had no way of knowing that. His bread and his fish would end up feeding so many people. But Jesus knew, he had said yes. The solution was there. There was no problem anymore. And so, I'm sure you know, our Lord takes the bread and takes the fish, gives thanks to God his Father, breaks the bread, breaks the fish, and begins to distribute them through the hands of the apostles. And everybody who is there gets more than enough to eat. There's loads left over, in fact. Baskets and baskets of bread left over after this miracle. So to my mind, it is a beautiful example of the importance of us saying yes when God asks us something, even though we don't know why. Very small things. Jesus said, maybe a little sacrifice. Offer that little sacrifice for me. Say this little prayer. Or be more patient with that person. Or stick at your studies. Don't pull out your phone and check the news. Or big things. Give up all your plans and follow me. And it is so important that we say yes. We don't know, and maybe we'll only know in heaven, what is hanging on that. What great things God will do with our yes. Today is also the feast, even though it's Sunday, we don't celebrate it, but it's the feast of an Indian girl, a saint, Saint Alfonso of the Immaculate Conception. And something like this also happens in her life. When she is a young girl, she was very pious from a very early age. She prayed a lot and clearly had the stirrings of a vocation to be a religious, and ended up, in fact, joining the Franciscan Clarists. But she lived with her aunt, who was a very severe woman, very demanding absolute obedience from her little niece, Alfonso. And she wasn't as keen on the faith as her niece was. And she wasn't so happy about the local Carmelites either. And she didn't like to see her niece praying for so long as she did at the foot of the altar. And not only that, probably seeing that there was a vocation budding here, religious vocation was budding, she did her level best to try to scupper that vocation, and tried to arrange a marriage for Alfonso, who was then known as Anakuti, trying to obstruct her religious vocation. Now, poor Anakuti, or St. Alfonso, was very put out by this, and we're told that she in fact did get out of this commitment to marriage, which looked like she wasn't going to be able to avoid. She burned herself seriously by putting her foot into a heap of burning embers. And she wrote afterwards, "My marriage was arranged when I was 13 years old. What had I to do to avoid it? I prayed all that night. Then an idea came to me. If my body were a little disfigured, no one would want me. Oh, how I suffered. I offered all for my great intention." Well, now, that's not a small yes. That's clearly a very big yes. That God was asking her, clearly she knew it, to be a nun, to be religious, to join those Carmelites or Franciscan Clarists. So she knew that, and she prayed and prayed and prayed. What am I to do? And then this very dramatic thing, though. She decided that she was going to disfigure her foot to make herself less eligible. She wouldn't be so desirable. And it worked. She confided to her sister that when she was only 12 years old, from then on she was saying, "Jesus is my only spouse and none other." So what a brave 13-year-old girl, that she had decided she was going to be marrying nobody except Jesus. So she died in 1946. She was canonized by Pope Benedict the 16th on this day in 2008. So quite a recent saint. But wow, what a yes. And what an example to us. Jesus, I want to be like her. Well, I don't have to put my foot into burning embers, but I want to say yes if you ask big things. But I want to also be like that small boy. When you ask for things which appear to be not so big, give over your little packet of food. Or in tiny things, work harder, be kinder, whatever it might be. Give me, Jesus, the strength to say yes, and I know that you will do great things with those yeses of mine. I give you thanks, my God, for the good resolutions, affections, and inspirations you have communicated to me in this meditation. I ask you for help to put them into effect. My Mother Immaculate, Saint Joseph, my Father and Lord, my guardian angel, intercede for me.